Book Boys,
Book Boys,
episode 4.
we are late
Yeah.
and we're not doing Nietzsche this week.
No. We've been busy.
It's been bad.
Yeah, it's been bad. We have a very big assignment due next week and kind of underestimated how much I would procrastinate.
Yeah, it's bad.
Probably the way I'd put it.
So today we're bringing you 3 Kafka short stories that are easy to consume at home.
Yeah, I think we've got quite a good selection. We've got 3 different stories of 3 different periods of his life, 3 different kind of quality, like in terms of their quality, in terms of like the themes and stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I really love Kafka's like short stories, and I think they're very accessible and like very like you can get a really good idea of what his style is like through just reading some of his short stories. So today we are reading the following: Children in the Lane, The Stoker, and a report from for an academy. Children in the Lane is, I think it might be his first published short story.
Really?
It might be, or at least it's maybe, or it's the first in the book that I have.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
It's published between as part of a bunch of short stories from between 1904 and 1912. So Kafka was between 21 and 29 when he wrote this. The next story, The Stoker, is one of his more, I'd say probably one of his more well-known books. Published in 1911 to 1912. Written in 1911 to 1912, and it was actually the first chapter of one of his first novel. We'll talk about that later. And then finally, one of his later works in 1917 is a report from an academy, and he was 34. And so he died when he was 41, I think. So this is, we could call this maybe late Kafka. I don't know. Yeah. Actually, when was the Metamorphosis written? Yeah, it's it's kind of late-ish Kafka. So yeah, I think we'll start. Children in the Lane is really short, so I'm just gonna read it. The other 2 are much longer, but yeah, I think this is probably the best way of getting an understanding of what this book is, of what this story is. Okay, are you ready?
I'm ready.
I could hear the carts driving by on the other side of the fence. I even caught occasional glimpses of them through the shifting gaps in the foliage. How their wooden spokes and shafts creaked in that hot summer. Workmen returning from the fields laughed outrageously. I was sitting on our little swing, having a rest amongst the trees in my parents' garden. The commotion beyond the fence went on and on. Running children passed in a flash. Weak carts with men and women perched on top of and all around the sheaves threw shadows on the flower beds. Towards evening I saw a gentleman with a stick out for a stroll, and 2 girls, coming arm in arm in the opposite direction, sidestepped into the grass with a greeting. Then birds flew up like spray, and I followed them with my gaze, watched how they rose with one breath till I no longer believed they were rising, but that I was falling, and holding tightly to the ropes I began to swing a little from sheer faintness. Before long I was swinging more strongly as the breeze blew cooler, and in place of the flying birds, flickering stars appeared. When the candle was lit, I was given my supper. I often leant both arms on the wooden tabletop as I bit sleepily into my bread and butter. The coarse open-work curtains billowed in the warm wind, and occasionally someone going past outside would catch hold of them, wanting to see me better and have a word with me. Usually the candle soon went out, and in the murky smoke the assembled mosquitoes would gad about for a while longer. If someone asked me a question from the window, I would eye him, as if staring at the mountains or off into space, and he would set no great store by an answer either. If he then vaulted in over the sill and announced that the others were waiting in front of the house, I would of course rise to my feet with a sigh. Hey, why the sigh? What happened? Some out of the ordinary, irretrievable disaster? Will we never be the same again? Are you saying all is lost? Nothing was lost. We ran round to the front of the house. Thank God. There you are at last. You're always late, you are. Why pick on me? Well, you are. Stay at home if you don't want to come. No mercy. What do you mean, no mercy? What are you talking about? We took the evening head on. There was no daytime and no nighttime. One minute our jacket buttons were gnashing like teeth. Next minute we were running at even intervals apart, fire in our mouths, like beasts in the tropics. Like dragons in old-time wars, pouring and rearing, we spurred one another on and down the short street and let our legs carry us far up the lane out of the village. Some dropped into the ditches. Hardly had they disappeared against the dark banks when they emerged to stand, like strangers, high up on the field path, looking down. "Come back down. No, you come up. For you to throw us down again? Not likely. We've more sense." "You mean you're too scared? Come on up, come on." "Scared of you? Think you can throw us down, do you? You've got a hope." We attacked. We're pushed in the chest and lay down in the grassy ditch, falling of our own free will. The world was a mellow place. We were aware of neither warmth nor cold in the grass, only of a weariness. If you turned onto your right side and put a hand under your ear, you felt like falling asleep. You may have wanted to push yourself up once more with your chin in the air, but only to fall into a deeper ditch. Then you wanted to hurl yourself, holding one arm out straight, legs awry, off into space, and know you would fall back into still a deeper ditch. And you wanted to go on and on doing this. How you would really lie down to sleep in your last resting place, stretched right out, especially the knees, is something you hardly ever thought to as, on the brink of tears, you lay on your back like an invalid. You blinked whenever one of the boys, holding his elbows in and showing his dark soles, leapt over you from the bank back into the lane. The moon was already some way up in the sky. A mail coach drove by in its own light. A gentle wind got up. You felt it even in the ditch, and the nearby forest started to rustle. You were no longer so set on being alone. "Where are you all? This way. Everyone over here. What are you hiding for? That's enough of that. Don't you realize the mail coach has already gone past?" "No, surely it hasn't yet." "Of course it has. Went past while you were asleep." "Me? Asleep? Come off it." "Shut up and take a look at it yourself." "Oh, really? Let's go." We stayed closer as we ran, some of us holding hands, and we had to keep our hands up as high as we could because the going was downhill. One boy yelled an Indian war cry. We worked up a gallop like nobody's business. The wind gave a lift to our hips as we left. Nothing could have stopped us. We had so much momentum that even when overtaking, we were able to fold arms and look casually about us. At the bridge over the torrent we halted. Those we heard run on coming back. Below us, the water smashed against boulders and roots as if it had not been late evening already. There was no reason why none of us jumped up on the handrail of the bridge. From a coppice in the distance, a train emerged, lights on in every compartment, the windows undoubtedly lowered. One of us started to sing a popular song, but we all wanted to sing. We sang much faster than the train was moving. We linked arms and swayed, because singing was not enough. Our voices welded us into a euphoric throng. When you blend your voice with others, it is like being taken on a hook. And so we sang, with the forest behind us and the sound of distant travel in our ears. The grown-ups still awake in the village. Our mothers were getting the beds ready for the night. It was time. I kissed the person standing nearest to me, shook hands nonchalantly with the next three, started walking back the way we had come. No one called after me. At the first crossroads where they could no longer see me, I turned off and followed the paths that led back into the forest. I was heading for the city in the south, of which they used to say in our village, "There are people for you, just think. They never go to sleep." And why don't they? Because they don't get tired. And why don't they? Because they're fools. Don't fools get tired then? How could fools get tired?
Okay. Thank you for reading.
No problem.
We read this story first about, what is it, 3 months now? 3 months ago?
Yeah.
Ish. We were in Prague, and I didn't think of it, I didn't think much of it at the time.
Mm.
And I'm not sure what to make of it exactly. But the general feeling of the story sometimes comes back to me. I think back at the story like, it's like those children.
Yeah, I think that's like this story is more difficult. I don't think there's much necessarily to interpret, but like it is. I remember it as a feeling more than anything.
Yes,
and there some details that I remember, and some things that I can like understand from reading it. But I think actually like the way that it's written is quite vague. Like when them playing in the ditch, for example, we know that these kids are playing in a ditch, but we have no idea really what it looks like. And like the first time I read it, I don't think I really fully like grasped what exactly was happening.
Yeah, I still haven't.
Yeah, it's like a kind of fever dream.
It's like that tall English gentleman on YouTube said about a country doctor. That Kafka.
Will Self, yeah.
Will, that's his name.
Yeah.
This story gives you a very distinct sense of movement.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, there's a lot of emphasis on the way the children run or they like move about.
That's a good point. And I think one thing the difference is that a lot of like movement in later Kafka stories are not in positive ways.
Yes.
And they're not in ways that are like your own will in that movement is much less like clear.
Yeah.
Much less defined.
Yeah, especially as well we're going to talk about this in a second in the Stoker as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, but I mean really in also the trial and Metamorphosis, a lot of like being swayed, being swept away by the flow of other people. I don't want to say the masses necessarily, but just kind of getting away from what you were originally doing and being kind of swept away in a general sense. Here's more. There's.
It's not a negative thing. It's not like it's not horrifying. This is like very nice, and there's that there's this one sentence which I think is quite nice. It's when you blend your voice with others, it's like being taken on a hook, and like a sentence like this in the trial or like a later Kafka story would be pretty horrifying.
Yeah,
but here it's kind of it's nice.
This is where they sing.
Yeah, this is for context. This is when they're singing on the bridge.
Yeah,
and it's like the pleasure in kind of giving yourself up to a group that you or like a group experience, right? Which can be a pretty pleasurable thing.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, I've also been wondering. I get the feeling from my small sample size that most authors start off writing positive kind of comedies and like happy or funny stories at the beginning of their career, and as you progress it gets darker and more horrifying. It's definitely the case with a lot of Japanese authors.
Right.
Yeah, I get the feeling that it's similar with Kafka and maybe Nietzsche as well.
That's interesting.
I wonder about that if you could make like a very general study about.
Yeah, you could do like a text analysis or something.
Yeah, and what does that say about, I guess, the human condition?
Yeah. That's why you shouldn't write. And I mean, in terms of like themes, I feel like this story is quite hard to really draw much from. But I think it like definitely achieves it does a pretty good job of like trying to translate like this sort of chaotic experience of being a child.
Yeah.
And it's like chaotic, but it's like feels completely natural, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like there's like this really sort of uninhibited way of experiencing the world, which has so little kind of logic. I really love on the last page, where he describes the protagonist. It was time. I kissed the person standing nearest to me, shook hands nonchalantly with the next three, and started walking home. I just love that. Like, there's just like there's no reason. There's no formality. like you still like engage with some like formalities with your friends, but like it's like I could shake 3 of your hands, I could shake none of your hands, I could just like do like a roly poly or something instead, or like shit my pants.
Yeah. I want you to shake 3 of my hands. No, so yeah, if you imagine in the trial, for example, we would have like inner monologues about, oh, but if I shake his hand, I would acknowledge my position is.
Sure, and that would be for like five pages.
Yeah. But here it's there's a certain the obviousness of everything just being kind of like it's like the child life is so non-structured.
Yeah.
In a very obvious way. Like, yeah, of course we're just gonna like roll down this hill and lay under this bridge for a while.
And it's non-structured to the point where a protagonist, or rather like, I don't know how you describe this, the protagonist isn't reflecting on it, but like viewing it through the perspective of the protagonist, there's a really like, there's like I don't know how to describe, like a low sense of self, on like there's no reflection, there's no like dialogue, we don't know anything about the character, we don't know anything about the other characters. It's like this really like unspecific, like non-specific, or like non-specified, I don't know how to describe it. It's like I don't know how to describe it. It's so hard to describe. But
you're doing a good job.
Shut up.
I'm not describing
it. It's as if, I don't know, I feel like this is when I read this, I feel like I'm experiencing what a child is experiencing, if that makes sense. Like I'm not experiencing, not to an extreme degree. It's not like perfectly done, but like I'm not reading about a child from the perspective of an adult.
Yeah.
But I'm reading about a child from the perspective of a child, if that makes sense. Like,
that does make sense. Yeah, I guess I don't think it's the right approach to a story like this to think like, oh, what is the message?
Yeah.
But more, what can we get from this story about Kafka as a writer, especially in his early stages, and how we know like what direction he went later?
Yeah.
Because if you just read this, you wouldn't think like, okay, yeah, this is obviously a Kafka story.
Yeah.
The usual characteristics aren't really developed.
Yeah, for sure.
So if we think Kafka, we think, yeah, as we said earlier, like weird sense of movement, kind of physics bending,
Yeah. Strange dialogue as well.
Yeah, strange dialogue, strange like structures, like spatially.
Yeah.
You just go down in a like cellar and it never ends and it just gets worse and that kind of shit, right?
Yeah, I think the idea of space is definitely something that's like you could talk about here. I think there's generally like you don't have a lot of confidence exactly where you are, and you're given a lot of information, but it doesn't really help. Maybe because there's so little context about who this character is, and like what their motivations are and what kind of world they think they live in and stuff like that. I don't know. But yeah, I think as a result, like the character just flies through all these different places and these different scenarios, and that is like, I think, quite a feature of Kafka's style. Not in the Stoker and not in A Report from Our Academy, but definitely in the Trial, and some other of the stories, I guess.
Yeah, so we've read some other like these kind of not really concise stories of his early career, and many of them have this kind of describing a certain scene in someone's life, without necessarily trying to hammer down a point, but conveying an atmosphere, so to speak. Do you think something happened in his life or in his writing career which dramatically changed his approach to writing, or do you think that this is the same Kafka that wrote The Trial and we're simply in a stage of progression? Like, does this story already have elements of the Kafka we know, or did something change?
I don't think there are elements missing from the story. Like, there's no faceless, terrifying authority or anything like that.
Yeah.
I do think that this feels like more of an exploration of style and exploration of trying to create atmosphere and observation as well. I think. So I'm reading Kafka's diaries at the moment as well, and I read it every now and then, a couple pages.
Yeah.
And one of the really nice things about it is you get a sense of him trying to develop or developing his perception as a writer. So he will describe something that happened, and you can tell that he's not just describing what happened, but he's also trying to as in how anyone might write a diary, this person did this, blah 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 blah. But there are points where you can tell that he's quite intentionally trying to think more about how to describe a person, or describing some strange quality about them, or describing the how surreal a certain point in his day felt, for example. And I don't know where I'm going with this.
Does it have the kind of character that this story has? Is it what you're saying?
I don't know if it does, but I can't really say that they really match. But I think there are qualities of this that feel trying to explore.
It is surreal, kind of.
It is really surreal, I think.
Something doesn't quite feel right, even if not in a bad sense necessarily.
No. I think it's surreal because it's it has it is from the perspective of a child. I think that's what is surreal about it, and it's quite carefully written to come across like that.
Yeah, it does leave a lot of questions open. There's a lot of ambiguity about, for example, with the ending, it's so are you going to this town? Are you leaving your hometown forever, or are you just on your way home? What is actually going on here? What was this the last day of you playing with your friends and now you're leaving, or was this just a regular occurrence every week? Or
I think the canon interpretation that he's going home.
Really? Okay.
I think so, yeah. But
okay, so in your reading, do you think this was a boy? Because for me, for some reason, this was clearly a girl in my mind.
Really?
Yeah.
I think when I first read this, I assumed it was a boy.
Really? Okay. For me, this is a girl playing with a group of boys. Because they, at some point, I think there is explicit mention of I said to the boy or something. Which felt like a girl would say that. And then also with the kiss, it feels like there was maybe one of the boys that she's just more interested in.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know why, but just the way it's written, it feels I picture a little girl playing with 3 boys.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I feel generally even though when I first read it, I kind of, I guess, assumed it was a boy. I don't really have any way of justifying why I thought that. I don't think.
Yeah.
Even if it were a boy, kissing the person standing nearest to me,
it wouldn't be weird. Yeah.
No, of course. It's just kind of shit kids do.
Yeah.
I don't know. It is really ambiguous, and also the age of the children as well. I guess they're very young. Yeah.
Okay, so I would say something about the sense of movement in space is perhaps putting like one foot in that Kafkaesque territory, but this is not yet quite the same Kafka that wrote the horrors that we're about to come.
And I think as well something about feeling a part of a group of people, and like being aware of being in a group, and like the like moving as one or something is another thing that maybe see more, but in a very bad way. In like a social convention means that I can't act in this way in this book, for example.
He exposed that idea a lot, and in this case it feels freeing in a sense to be constrained by the group.
Yeah.
Whereas in a lot of his later stories is the opposite.
Yes. Cool.
Okay.
Alright,
let's talk about the Stoker.
Yeah, so Stoker.
In German, a bit more accessible title, Der Heizer. I didn't know what the fuck a stoker is when the first time I saw this title. I was like, what? So a stoker, I believe, refers to the person shoveling coals into a fire in an engine room, either on a ship or on a train, perhaps as well.
Maybe on a train, yeah. But definitely in a steamship.
Yeah.
Like there's that section of a ship which is just full of coal and full of dudes, like dirty dudes, like shoveling coal.
Ranch.
So this book, this short story was published in 1913, but it was originally, well, it is the first chapter of Kafka's first novel, which was incomplete and I think finished by Max Brod, but first novel called America, which is, I haven't read this, but I kind of looked at a little bit, and it seems to be kind of like a bit of a rambling adventure.
Yeah.
Apparently it was inspired a lot by like old American novels and like kind of American adventure novels. And this, I think, is this is the first scene, and I think there are a couple scenes which kind of mirror or kind of resemble what we experience in the Stoker, and it's the idea of like people having to prove their innocence, or people having to prove themselves, make their case in front of an authority, or like a kind of strange authority. Or unfamiliar authority, or something that's at least unfamiliar to the reader.
Okay. So what happened? How does the story start?
The story starts with the 16-year-old protagonist, Karl Rossmann. He is on a ship to New York and to the New York harbor, and we're told from the beginning that he's been sent off by his parents because the servant that worked for their family basically raped him and like had a kid.
It's like the 35-year-old maid enticed him.
Yeah, it's said that he seduced him and had a child with him. Yeah.
So the family was like, "You suck, go away."
Yeah, and we are also told the Statue of Liberty has a sword in its hand, which we can maybe talk about later. But what happens is he's on the deck. Everyone's waiting to get off, and he realizes he's forgotten his umbrella. So he hands his suitcase to the friend that he's with and says he'll come back.
Yeah, and we use friend here very loosely, right?
Yeah, so a kind of guy that he met on the boat.
Yeah, some guy, he doesn't even really know his name.
Yeah.
He has his business card in his pocket. But yeah, it's like a guy he talked to a little bit. He's like, "Here's my suitcase.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go grab my umbrella."
And then, this is the point where we are cut off and we enter this sort of
Kafka universe.
Yeah. So he goes into the underbelly of the ship to try and look for this umbrella. Can't find it, and he gets brought into a room. He gets invited into a room by this guy, who we later find out is the Stoker.
Yeah, even before that, so we're told that the passage that he was gonna go to take his umbrella would be a really quick way, but it's blocked for some reason. And so he has to go through, and this is basically where we enter the whale.
It's like Silent Hill.
Yeah, this is like where the curtain of the Kafka theater is rising, and it's like so it's described how he goes through all these like rooms and staircases and through different rooms, and like one room has like the rooms are also described like there's a room with a big like meeting table and there's no one there, and so he's basically lost, right? Mm-hmm. And it's also described how he didn't know this earlier, but the ship is actually huge.
Yeah.
And we have some description of like people working. And here already we have this idea of the bureaucracy.
Mm.
This has a very similar feeling to the courtrooms in the trial.
Mm.
All these rooms, there's all these people working. It's this huge machine that operates autonomous. We've never really noticed it before, but now that we're lost in it, it's like, what the fuck's going on here?
And we're there when we're not supposed to be there as well.
And we don't want to be there.
Yeah.
Okay, so he meets this guy.
Yeah, and this guy invites him into his room, and he is the stoker, we find out. Basically the stoker, he kind of lures him in and says, okay, we'll go and find your umbrella soon, but you've lost the suitcase, but like slowly kind of like the preoccupation with the umbrella is lost and the preoccupation with the suitcase is lost.
Yeah.
And then he finds himself like talking with this guy, finds out that he's the stoker of the ship, and then from that point it's like we've forgotten about everything.
This is so, I think, intentionally frustrating about Kafka protagonists.
Yeah.
Like they just get swept away by the tide, and like they completely forgot what they were originally supposed to do.
Yeah.
And now we've gone on this like another adventure, and it's like, dude.
Yeah.
And even
it's a series of small mistakes as well.
There was an interesting detail. So as soon as he gets,
we should get through the plot.
Oh, you want to do the summary first?
Should we do that?
Okay, we can do that.
I was thinking that would be better, just to very quickly explain.
No, okay.
So, just to very quickly summarize, the stoker has a complaint about this guy called Shiver, who is his superior and has all these issues with him, and he is planning to go to see the captain now that the ship has landed, and so they end up going together. I think maybe they go to try and find the umbrella or something, but no, maybe not. But then they end up outside the captain's quarters, or the like main area of the ship where the captain is, and the stoker goes in, and then our boy also finds himself getting pushed inside as well. And basically, for whatever reason, Carl is like, he is like impulsed to fight for this stoker's case, and to try and like use his leverage to help the stoker. And what follows is this really like horribly embarrassing dialogue from the stoker, as he just like completely falls apart in front of all these officials and people of power in the boat, in the ship. And then
out of left field, one of the guys is like, "Wait, aren't you Carl? I'm your uncle."
Yeah.
So then,
this is a plot twist.
Yeah.
But it's really like the most unanticipated plot twist. Carl's uncle is present on the ship, and he's a senator, and
in the U.S.
Yeah. And then the whole scene changes. Carl is suddenly favored by everyone on the ship, but in becoming favored, it completely distracts from the whole stoker's case.
Yeah.
And there's this weird kind of conflict between his kind of newfound power or status or whatever, and his desire to help the stoker. And eventually his will kind of just completely fades, and he's led off the ship.
Yeah.
And he realizes, or he is told many times that there's nothing that he can do.
Yeah, so he leaves with his uncle,
Yeah.
who will take care of him from now,
Yes.
or whatever. Okay,
Cool.
for the summary. Okay, so I wanted to go back to the
Yeah,
when
yeah,
he
yeah.
first goes into the Stoker's room, and I think there was at least once, but maybe even multiple times, a very similar scene in the trial, and also, of course also in the story The Country Doctor,
Yeah.
where as soon as he enters the room, I think this is in a trial, I think it's with Brock, the tradesman, but he's immediately invited to lay down on the bed,
Yeah.
which is so fucking surreal.
It is really
It's
weird.
like,
Yeah.
who are you? I don't know, but you should lay down on my bed.
Yeah.
And so he lays down, and then they chat, and it's like, don't lay down.
Yeah. It's like meeting strangers 101.
Yeah.
And yeah, there was a point as well, I think, where he tries to get up and the Stoker actually like pushes him down.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a really strange character when we first meet him.
So they have something in common, which is that they're both German. Right? So it's a German ship, and this is kind of I guess a side note, but also a theme of the story is kind of, I guess, this is 1913. There are kind of tensions in Europe. There's a lot of this identity stuff and prejudice and so on. So the Stoker is very unhappy because his superior officer, Schuwal, I think, right? He's Romanian?
I think so, yeah.
And there's other like non-Germans on this boat, but even though the Stoker claims that he has like greatly served many captains on other ships, for some reason he's treated very badly here, and his colleagues always like talk bad about Germans, and he's very angry that he isn't respected.
And he's also frustrated that the technological developments have kind of taken away from the craft of his job. He talks about how, like, in the past they've made it so much easier, and I think as a result he doesn't feel like he's taken so seriously, or like his ability is valued.
Yeah, and this protagonist, this is maybe the most annoying Kafka protagonist.
He's
like maybe even worse than the trial, but because like immediately as we meet the Stoker, and the Stoker just kind of rambles on, like we have this inner dialogue of the main character, like, this guy is not making sense. I shouldn't like get too close to him. Like this guy is hard to deal with. And then the Stoker says something like, "Oh, well, I have to finish this task, but we can look for your umbrella later." And then his next inner dialogue is like, "Okay, this guy is my only way out of here. Like I should be his friend."
Yeah, and he actively like tells the guy that he should go to speak to the captain. Like it's the same as a Country Doctor. Like he trying to do what he thinks is the right thing, but it's actually like making his situation much more complicated.
Yeah, and he's not even like being swept away that forcefully, but he's kind of letting himself be sucked in by someone else's problems. And
he also gets to the point where he, justifies losing the suitcase. Like one thing that I really like about the dialogue that they have, and this is, I think, a style of something that Kafka does really well, is how he describes people being convinced to not worry about certain things that they previously thought were important. Like through the conversation, he reevaluates the suitcase, and he's like, "Oh, well, it's okay. It's just it just had my spare suit in it, which was a cheap one.
Yeah,
that my mum was adjusting just before I left. And it had a piece of salami in it. And the only reason that I would actually want the suitcase now is to give the guy the salami. If only I had the suitcase so I could give the Stoker his salami, even though he's the one that's keeping me from my suitcase, which I'm losing."
Me reading this as a German in Japan, being like, "Please, someone give me a salami." I would kill for a salami right now. No. Yeah, that's a good point. I think he does that a lot.
Yeah,
Kafka.
he does.
I'm thinking back on the trial.
Like,
There was a.
Was the section where he meets the judge? Oh no, I might be misremembering.
I mean, in a similar sense, from the very start in Metamorphosis, our protagonist Gregor, he like completely gave up on like any kind of analysis of his condition or like how to get better or trying to find out what happened. He's just like, this is my situation now, and let's see where you go from here.
Yeah.
Like, he's not trying to fix anything.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah. Okay, thanks. So they he accepts this loss of the suitcase kind of prematurely, and then he decides to join the stoker going to the office. And they go down the galley and they pass some women who are washing dishes, and the stoker goes to one of the girls called Lena, and like flirts with her, and they have like a bit of back and forth before they carry on. And I guess maybe we should talk about her now, or maybe we could revisit her later on. Keep that in your head, dear listener. It's important. Then we go to the door of the office, and he gets let inside, and Carl's kind of like hanging by the door for a minute, and then he basically gets like pulled in, right? So there's the same kind of like, you know, the moment where it's like, it's not a place where he should go, and it's not a place where he's welcome. It's not a place where like he has any interest in being, but almost because he didn't do anything, he was like drawn into this like next level of like surrealness and next level of like I don't know, next level of the story. And then how does it begin?
Yeah, so what kind of people do we have in this new room? There is a captain at like the main desk, and then there's some like harbor officials talking in English. There's the servant.
Yeah.
Who tries to like hold them off at first. He's like, "Who the fuck are you?"
Yeah.
And then there's some other important people. One of them being the senator, which we don't know yet that he is the senator.
Yeah.
Or the uncle. Yeah.
And we basically have like authorities of different level and different kind, and but it's like very clear that they all have specific authorities, and there is a kind of hierarchy.
Yeah, this feels a bit like with the sense of authority and also audience. This feels like the first courtroom trial, like the first courtroom hearing in the trial.
Yeah.
With the magistrate. Okay.
It's yeah, but it's definitely this story is definitely less surreal than the trial, I think. I mean, obviously it's not like a court in the attic of a flat, but
yeah, in terms of the like direct physical space,
yes,
it makes more sense. But in the way the story develops, it all almost makes less sense.
Yeah.
So the Stoker doesn't actually really like talk at first.
Yeah, he speaks in a very quiet voice to the servant in the room.
So Carl, for some reason, is like, I'm going to walk up right to the captain.
Yeah.
In which immediately everyone in the room is like watching him, and like the atmosphere changes. And he is like, "Dear Mr. Captain, my friend the Stoker here has been wronged on your ship, even though he has this very nasty superior who doesn't treat him well, and apparently you're about to let him go. You're about to fire him even though he's been working diligently. And what say you to that, sir?
Yeah. And I think, so he asserts himself.
Yeah.
Is this action on account of him being like a 16-year-old who hasn't like either no respect for authority or a limited understanding of authority, or like, or do you think it's something that any kind of Kafka character would do? Do you think that his age like plays a role in this?
He's acting very similar to the character, the protagonist in the trial. The way he walks up to the judge right away.
Yeah.
And it's like, this here's why I'm here. This is my perspective. What now, bitch?
I think this is like this is often kind of like a way that people try to deal with, or they try and test authority and like bureaucracy, for example, like by, I don't know, I think it's like, it can be a quite typical response when someone is like faced with some like bullshit like form they have to fill out, or like some annoying process. They just like, oh, I'm just gonna go there and like talk to them, or like I'm just gonna like ring them up or whatever. I'm just gonna like go and speak to the main person involved. It's like, you can try it, but it never works.
Can I talk to the manager?
Yeah. Speaking to the manager, and you know, like a certain professor we know, like, fucking like do this. And it's like, you can try, but it's you'll get pacified. But this isn't so much like a challenge as much of it is just like I think it's an appeal to their kind of like, you know, how do you describe, they're like, it's like an appeal to them to listen to a guy who has something to say. And I think it's something that they maybe find difficult to turn down, even though they are clearly very busy people.
Well, and the obvious thing in this situation is, of course, that he doesn't actually know the stoker.
Yeah.
So he's like making this case.
Yes.
In front of the authority, saying that he has been wronged greatly and he's such a great guy, when really he cannot judge that at all.
Yeah, and he's not only vouching for the stoker, but he's vouching against Hubal as well.
Yes,
which is kind of the problem, the real problematic part of that. I think, like, it's not just one person involved; it's the reputation of someone else who may actually not be as bad as the stoker thinks.
Yeah, and so the immediate response from the captain is nothing. He just kind of sits and listens. But the, like, I don't know what his rank is, but the next, like, lower subordinate of the captain is quick to walk up and be like, well, who the fuck are you? And, like, why are you talking anyways? And so on.
Yeah.
And then the captain is like, well, let's hear these gentlemen out. And so then the stoker walks up and, quote unquote, makes his case.
Yeah.
Which is described as him rambling on in a very chaotic and emotional, disheveled manner. Not well spoken. And at some point he like starts flailing his arms violently and cries.
Yeah.
And it's described as the hurt pride of a strong man or something like that.
I think sorry, go on.
No, he's described as kind of this simpleton idiot.
Yeah.
Who doesn't know how to address someone who's busy, and like he mentions all these names, like this guy said this and then this guy. Well, obviously the captain doesn't know who all these people are.
Yeah.
And like he's really not making a good case for him, and just kind of very personally and emotionally complaining about his superior.
Yeah, I think he's like unaware of how you approach like these kinds of systems, I guess. Firstly, the fact that he's like addressing the captain directly is like the first kind of mistake, I think. Maybe not like a critical mistake, but kind of suggests that he doesn't quite know. It's kind of like being in Japan and like when you like go to work somewhere or something and you don't know the system, and like it takes you time, or like if you're in like some university club or whatever, it takes you time to actually understand what system everyone is kind of working within, like when it comes to like certain like hierarchies in the workplace and stuff.
Yeah.
And not that they need to be adhered to, but in this situation, like in order for his case to be taken seriously, he's got to present things properly. And like the fact that he's like kind of bawling to this captain as if he were anyone else is like obviously a critical mistake. And I really like I think the dialogue here is like one of the best parts of the story. Like the way that Kafka writes this sense of like losing control in a conversation, or like he's got like a really keen like sense of like how like the dialogue progresses on a longer scale. Like in the trial, when Kay first speaks before the judges in the court, the first time he goes to the court, the kind of way that that's described, and he's like keenly describing all the different like responses of the audience and stuff, even though he's completely wrong. Like, I don't know, Kafka writes with an attention to like the audience as well as the person speaking, and I think it's just very cool.
Mm-hmm.
So like, at some point, Carl notices that he's losing the attention of the audience, and this guy starts tapping his bamboo cane on the floor, for example, and then the other guys who aren't so involved with the captain, like the American guys, they turn back and they start working on their stuff again.
Yeah.
And like eventually it just all falls apart, but it falls apart because of a lack of attention.
Yes.
And then it's just like him burbling in front of the captain, basically, right?
And we have this inner monologue of Carl thinking like, should I intervene? Should I try to fix this? Like, what can I do? Should I be like, no, my friend, you should bring your points this way, not this way.
Yes,
you should explain it to him this way, not this way. But then he's like, no, maybe he would slap me because he's already like so out of like violently flailing his arms.
Yeah.
And he's so emotional right now. I better not make it worse.
But he does tell him to try and explain it more simply. But it is just, it does not help.
No, so he does eventually intervene. And then the
it's I can describe the moment actually. So this is after he says, you must tell it more simply and clearly. The captain can't do justice to it the way you're telling it to him. The next paragraph starts, if only it had done the trick, but perhaps it was too late in any case. The stoker did break off immediately upon hearing the familiar voice, but his eyes, veiled as they were with tears of hurt male pride, appalling recollections and deep present distress, were not even capable of recognizing Carl anymore. So bad.
Yeah. This is like... Have you ever seen people in this kind of state? Like, they thought they had like a very clear case where they were wronged and everyone would agree. And then they bring their case and they just look like a fool and it gets worse and it doesn't end. I've seen court trials like this.
I think I've seen some of my professors like that. But no, for sure. It's like really, really painful. Really painful. Really difficult to like watch, and I imagine very difficult to also experience as well.
It's like, do you know that the original Humongous video?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's that woman that comes up to him, right?
Yes.
And so, should I explain the context? I don't know if it's worth
it.
But yeah, look up Humongous on YouTube.
Oh, okay. I think I know what you mean. Yeah, it's like when you fail in like such a situation, like I think that's different. The Humongous situation is different though, like because it's not.
I'm saying the woman is the stoker.
No, I know, but I don't think there's any acknowledgement at the time that like she was like being overly aggressive and stuff and like not making a case.
Really? And this is
well, it doesn't respond in the same way as the stoker, right? The stoker's like quiet, and he's like, his eyes are veiled with tears of hurt male pride.
But he's not quiet. He's like yelling, right?
The stoker. Oh, I know. I mean, at the end. That's
okay.
my point.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Alright. Okay. Anyway, so
steer this conversation away from this academic conversation away from humongous.
So Carl intervened, and then this second in line, like captain's left hand kind of guy.
Yeah.
He's like, so who are you anyway?
Mm.
And right when he says that, the stoker's superior officer, Shubal, he walks in. And so everyone's like, oh, here's the person in question that has just been accused, right?
Yeah.
And Shubal is like, well, he's actually not that well spoken, but in comparison to the stoker, he's so much more composed that everyone is like, finally, a human being is talking, and like,
yeah, he like addresses to the room in like a very structured way. He's like, I believe I've been summoned here, and like I believe the accusations against me have been like are wrong and poorly founded, and I have listed all the things that I have against my opponent, and I have some witnesses with me as well.
Yeah,
and it's like he's just like bam, like this is me.
Yeah, but Carl in his inner monologue, he like dismantles Shubal's opening statement. He's like, why would he say this? He's obviously lying, and like he's pointing out all these flaws in what Shubal is saying. But basically, Shubal knows how to play the game.
Yes, yeah.
He knows how to address someone in authority. He knows what are the manners and so on.
Yeah.
So he thinks that even though he's wrong and he's a bad person, well, he's better spoken and he knows how the game works. So there's really no hope for poor Mr. Stoker here.
Yeah. And I guess it's also like worth knowing as well that like still Carl doesn't know anything about the stoker.
No, he doesn't know.
And like
Carl.
Yeah, like so yeah, he has this like bias towards the stoker for no reason, and that's one of the reasons why he kind of sees Shubal as this like conniving guy. So. Yeah, I don't think Lena comes back. It's later on. But after Shubal turns up, they kind of just ignore him for a second and then come back to the whole situation with Carl and this other guy in the room. And we basically find out that that Carl is related to the senator, who is this guy in the room. Yeah,
so the second in line officer again is like, to come back to our earlier conversation, who are you? And he's like, I'm Karl Rosenbaum, whatever.
Yeah.
And then the guy who's the uncle, like, okay, wait, you look like my nephew. You are my nephew. So apparently, this guy who's in the room, who is a U.S. senator of high rank, apparently, he got a letter by, I believe, the housemaid.
Yes.
That Carl had a child with.
Yeah.
Which is the reason why he was sent off. And so she sent his uncle in America a letter detailing how Carl looks and what ship he's going to be on.
Yeah.
And so on. So this is supposedly the reason why the senator is even here, to meet Carl, maybe?
Maybe, yeah.
But maybe not. It's not clear.
Yeah, it's not clear because, like, I mean, if that were the reason that the senator was there, you would imagine that he would have found Carl before, right?
Yeah, and he's kind of in the wrong place as well.
Yeah, he's not in the right place.
Like, everyone's already left the ship. They would know, like, why would he be looking for his nephew in the captain's...
He's clearly there on his own business as well.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's like said in the beginning. So yeah, I don't think that he's there specifically for him, and that's why it's also a surprise as well.
Yeah.
Right? And then the senator explains to the whole room that this explains this guy's experience with the maid and like why he's got sent here.
Yeah. Basically kind of embarrasses Carl.
Yeah.
But in a very like happy-go-lucky, like, look at my nephew, he's so cute.
Yeah. It's kind of fucked.
Yeah, and the mood immediately changes, right? Even the stoker is like congratulating Carl now, like, oh, I'm so happy you found your uncle.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like this weird scene. Oh, we don't care about the stoker anymore. The same way that we don't care about the suitcase anymore.
Yes, yeah.
Or the same way that we don't care about the umbrella anymore.
Yeah. It all gets pushed aside, and like everyone comes and crowds around him and congratulates him. And I really like the way that that's described, because it does really feel like this like frontier like migrant experience of like, and you know, given like the technology of the time, the coincidence of it, and like everyone being like, oh wow, this is amazing. I'm so happy I got to experience this like reunion of family.
Yeah.
Which is really nice and really beautifully written, but then in the context of the whole story, it's like, huh? And the stoker's just standing in the corner of the room, like trembling, like his fists clenched.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think the stoker does congratulate him first, I think, and which is really awkward because the stoker is kind of like he's not really allowed in this situation. He's not really allowed to be in this room, or like he's not meant to be there.
Yeah.
And suddenly, like, it's as if the reunion and the whole happiness of that is a matter of all the officials and the authorities and Carl, rather than, and like the stoker can't be a part of that.
Yeah. So it's
like kind
it's
of the sense of
described
that.
how the stalker comes up to Carl and shakes his hand, and then he goes to his uncle, the senator.
That's it, yeah.
But then he doesn't shake his hand because the senator kind of goes a step back, and it's like, no, there is a wall between us.
Yeah.
You are a dirty man. I am a good man.
Yeah.
Like,
Which is cool.
And then, Carl runs this dialogue in his head about, okay, so basically, I want to help the stoker, but it's kind of nothing I can do at this point. The way this conversation has been going, it seems like he's just going to get fired, and the shoeball guy clearly has the men in the room under his control. So, I'm just going to go off with my uncle now.
Yeah, so this is after he has this quite like graphic recollection of like his experience with this maid.
Right.
And which I guess is like contrasting. Maybe it's kind of contrasting the whole like, or it's adding this third dimension to this thing of like him being reunited with family, him like being in a room with this stoker dude who's like out of the situation, and then remembering about like essentially being raped by this fucking woman, this housemaid.
Yeah.
And but this is also forgotten about. This also it plays a part, and then it's just kind of like we're back in the scene, and it's never really mentioned again.
Oh, and also when they leave, the captain's.
Well, I think maybe before that we should.
Okay.
There's some important quotes like about justice, right?
Yeah.
So, which I think is quite reminded me of the trial. So it's acknowledged like before that the stoker has lost. Carl says, "What's going to happen to the stoker now?" Carl asked, ignoring his uncle's latest anecdote. In his new position, he felt able to say anything that was on his mind. "The stoker will get what he deserves," said the senator, "and what the captain considers to be right. I think we have all had more than enough of the stoker, and I am sure that every one of the gentlemen present will agree with me." And later on, he says, Don't misunderstand the situation," the senator said to Carl. "Justice may be at stake here, but so too is the question of discipline. Both matters, and in particular the second, fall in this instance within the jurisdiction of the captain." This is interesting, I think. Like, we have this this, you know, a ship is kind of its own microcosm, or like its own kind of like society.
Yeah, its own country, no. Almost.
Yeah, and you know, back in the day, they were like, you know, if you were traveling across the Atlantic, like you needed to have protection. If you were a captain, you needed to protect yourself from mutiny. You needed to keep everyone happy. Then had to be some degree of like governance, right? And
I mean, it's like the expression, "You're running a tight ship."
Yes, exactly.
It's like discipline, order. There's a way that things are done, and even if this guy was maybe wronged or is an injustice, it's not as much about that as more knowing how to conduct yourself.
Yeah, and
in a system,
and whatever, you know, to deal with the stoker, the best thing to do in that situation is just to get rid of him. Because he doesn't have any, you know, he seems to be completely alone. He doesn't seem to really have any allies, you know, because he's just going with the first guy that he met. And this ship is an authority, the captain is an authority who makes this decision. And when I was reading up about this, someone was connecting this to the Statue of Liberty holding the sword. The idea of like this like
justice, right? Yeah.
Justice being a question of who has authority or who has the sword, who has like the strength. And yeah, I don't know, I thought it was kind of interesting. It's different to the trial. The trial, it's like this, it's just this thing, you know, like the law is just this thing that exists. It's almost like this like naturally occurring thing that you know, you can't escape, and if you try to, it will kill you.
But similarly to the trial, we have the idea that it is not justice or whether you're really guilty or not. You've been accused, right? It was a similar situation for the stoker. You've been accused, and now it's not about actually determining your guilt or absence thereof, but more so about following the proper procedures, following the discipline.
Sure.
And I guess if this ship is a microcosm of a country for greater society, this would imply that, you know, people who can't fit in with the social systems or the law or whatever the customs are, as you said, you know, better get rid of.
Yeah, I think as well, like the what makes this story less surreal is that it's described as discipline rather than just like the law. Because like you know, in the case of a ship, whilst it might not be right, you can understand the necessity for these kinds of things, for discipline, for example, needing to exist on a ship if you are a captain. But it's not as clear in this trial.
Yeah, because if every cog doesn't work disciplined, you're jeopardizing the whole enterprise.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so as they walk out the captain's room, all the witnesses of Shubal come in, and they've been kind of allowed outside. So they've been allowed. So the captain calls in the witnesses. Yeah. Because they were like disturbing the hearing or whatever, and this girl Lena, she's one of them, and she like tied her skirt around a
apron.
She tied her apron around like a sailor guy.
One of these sailors is also a eyewitness, right? One of Shubal's. So the sailor comes in to announce that they've arrived, I think, and he's wearing the apron, and he takes it off, and he's like, they tied a woman's apron on me.
Yeah.
And then it turns out that it was Lena's apron, and she tied it on him.
And then she also ties it on Carl as he leaves. Or, like, she tries to, like... So, and here's one note that I picked up.
I'm not sure if... Sorry, no, go on.
Both, so, similar, very, very, very similar to the kind of female archetype we have in the trial, all the female characters in Kafka's stories are kind of the same.
Yeah, yeah.
They're dishonest, disloyal, coquettish, kind of flirting, but in like a very unpleasant like way. Like, oh, I thought you were a thing. Like the way she behaves around the Stoker, you would think she's his girl, but she's kind of just being weird with everyone.
Yeah,
and now she's also testifying as a witness, like on Schubal's behalf. Yeah. Even though she was so friendly with the Stoker earlier, and she also like when Carl first met her, she was also like, "Ooh, who's this pretty boy you brought along?" Yeah. Like there, and similar with the maid as well. She's like, with the way she seduced him, but then also writing a letter to his uncle. It's like the women, they never really act in these stories. They're always like informing people in them, and they're like kind of the, I don't want to say like behind the scenes engineering the play, but they always push the men in certain directions and orchestrate the whole story. Yeah, because if she hadn't written the letter, it wouldn't have turned out this way.
Yeah, sure. It's like there's at least a degree of like they do stuff behind the scenes that other characters don't. And yeah, like she's like one of the only named characters in this whole story as well, which is kind of interesting. But like, I didn't think when they met that the Stoker and Lena were together. I kind of just interpreted it more as like just like, like in like workplaces like that, like people just like, when people are very familiar in the workplace, they can like be kind of flirty like that. I
don't know, but he like put his arms, he like put his arms around her hip, and she like, Carl describes that she like kind of flirtingly presses herself against him.
Yeah, maybe, but
it is definitely sexualized.
Of course. Yeah. I would never doubt that, of course. But I'm not necessarily sure that means that they're together.
Yeah, but she behaves the same way that the maid behaved in the trial.
Yeah.
Or the like wife of the guy in the attic.
It's similar. But I think, it was just like really uncomfortable feeling when it's revealed that like Lena was involved, and just like the sense that you can't really trust anyone, and like as well, like Lena is, like you said, like she is there's a common thing with Kafka's like protagonists that they are like fawned on by women. Which is kind of funny. Like he's like, it's like, like, I don't know, 1970s like science fiction writers like writing about girls with like massive like 3 tits or whatever. It's kind of, it feels in some, I don't think it's like fantasy for him so much, but like it does read a little bit like that.
Yeah, it does. But
they are also awful as well.
They're also awful, and they're always humiliating the men.
Yeah. And there's a big fucking red pill reading of this, which I fucking hate. I don't know what to make of it exactly, but we also find out that Schubal, he got wind of this whole situation because one of the women, perhaps Lena, told him about it. Yeah. So again, we have the women not acting directly, but putting the men into place, putting the pieces on the board that sweeps this whole, like, puts this whole weird story into movement. Yeah.
And it's the same in the trial.
Yeah.
And so we have the way, I forgot, what is it, Fräulein Büstner in the trial. She appears at the end before Kay is decapitated. They meet on the street and kind of like, oh, hi, I was kind of doing shit in the background. Lena appears here in the same way.
Yeah, it's like the reveal when you've been like bludgeoned in the head, and like they like come around the corner and they were like there all along.
Yeah. It's it's a very interesting thing, like his female archetype in a lot of these stories, and I don't know exactly what it means, or what to do with it, but it's quite striking.
Yeah, I think it's also doesn't like I don't feel like it makes that much sense when you look at his life either. Like, because he wasn't married and like he didn't have that much success like with romance, but like I don't think he was. Firstly, I don't think he was as like fucking crazy. Like when people talk about like Kafka being having like a sad existence, I actually don't think it was nearly as sad as what people think. I think like there's reading his diaries and stuff that there's so many like and a lot of his writing like he has very 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 positive experiences with lots of different people and like he's described by like Max Brod as being generally like a happy person at least. I think when people or at least when I first was learning about Kafka, I just thought this guy's whole existence was completely intolerable.
Yeah.
And whilst he certainly did have a lot of difficulties, I don't think his day-to-day life was actually as painful.
Yeah, he seemed to be quite like a sociable, bright character with his friends and so on. But I think maybe in his more private life, family and also like in his writing, he let out maybe the dark side.
Yeah, definitely. And it might be, I don't know, his experience with like prostitutes or something. I don't know.
Yeah, apparently he went a lot. So.
Yeah, but even then,
that would make you suspicious of women.
I guess so.
But that's a bit too little to justify this kind of female archetype that we have recurring in his stories.
Yeah, it's weird because it's like such a minor part of the writing, but it feels like such a huge part of the implication of the story.
Yeah.
But it's hard to really pin down what it means, what he was trying to say.
Maybe he's not trying to say anything, but it's just kind of a way that he experienced the female spirit in his life.
Yeah.
Like a kind of like indirect force in the background that always seems to be pulling the strings, but you can't quite put your finger on it. Whenever there's conflict, you're always having conflict with another man, with someone like, and of course we also at the time we have more like defined gender roles, with women not being really in these kind of bureaucratic positions.
Yeah.
So there is that, but all the people like his enemies, his direct opponents in these stories are always men, but they seem to be in the same way that the protagonist is kind of under the influence of women. And the women don't really have power in the stories directly.
Yeah, and they're also
treated badly by the men.
Yes, and of very like low like socioeconomic status.
Very low status. But they always seem to somehow get the upper hand in the background.
Yeah. It's interesting that like so the Stoker, he completely like ignored the hierarchy and the whole proceedings by going straight to the captain and speaking to him.
Yeah.
But the maid did a pretty similar thing when she mailed the uncle, right?
Yeah.
Like, not it's kind of out of any it's aside from like any channel, and like for a maid to like contact a distant family member of the family that they're working for, especially with like such news, is like, I don't know, seems kind of strange.
Yeah, it seems the women always are like working one-on-one with someone in the background, whereas the men usually solve their conflict in public with like confrontation. Yeah. Okay. Wait. So the ending. Let's talk about the ending, and then we can maybe take a little break.
Yeah.
So he goes off. The captain is like, okay, so we'll see it. We'll meet each other again now that you're like, we've established that you're the nephew of this great senator, and so he organizes a boat for them to leave the ship with, and the sailor is rowing it for them, and as they leave, Carl reflects on how, he doesn't really like, he's completely detached from the Stoker now.
Yeah.
And he talks to his uncle a little bit. And maybe we can just read the last few sentences. I thought they were quite...
I'll just read the last paragraph. They followed the sailor out of the office and along a little gangway that brought them after a few paces to a door, from which a short ladder descended to the waiting boat. The sailors in the boat, whom the one who had been leading them immediately joined with a single leap, stood up and saluted. The senator was just warning Carl to be careful how he climbed down when Carl, still on the top step, burst into tears. The senator put his right hand under Carl's chin, held him tightly to him, and used his left hand to stroke him. In this close embrace they slowly descended step by step and got into the boat, where the senator found a good seat for Carl right opposite him. At a signal from the senator, the sailors pushed off from the ship and fell to rowing at full speed. Before the boat had gone more than a few yards, Carl made the unexpected discovery that they were on the side of the ship that the windows of the chief purser's office looked out on. All 3 windows were occupied by witnesses of shoeballs, who were waving to them in the friendliest manner imaginable. Even Carl's uncle acknowledged their greetings, and one of the sailors somehow contrived, without breaking a stroke, to blow them a kiss. It was just as if the stoker had ceased to exist. Carl looked more closely at his uncle, whose knees, his own, were almost touching, and began to doubt whether this man could ever take the stoker's place, as far as he was concerned. His uncle, moreover, avoided his gaze, looking instead at the waves that were tossing their boat about.
Wait, this is maybe slightly different from the one I read. Oh, I guess it's very similar. Okay,
so we have like the stoker is erased, right?
Yeah.
And there's this weird kind of surreal thing of like the 3 windows being completely taken up by shoeballs. Eyewitnesses who are all waving to them really friendlily. Yeah, it's a weird way to end a book.
And I think the key passage that was kind of striking here is that he's reunited with his uncle and everything, but then it's like, but I doubt this man will ever replace the stoker for me.
Yeah.
What exactly is going on?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I almost made a genuine friend, a man of lower status, whatever, and now I'm on the dark side, basically. Now I'm on the side of the system of the law. The laws, or the system, is waving at me friendly. And I'm okay now, but my friend is basically fucked. And well, I guess, am I gonna be part of this now?
Well, he's kind of he's like selling out, I think.
Yeah.
Like the whole like he is kind of like he's almost compelled to accept his uncle because he was caught in a situation where he wanted to help out the stoker, but that didn't do anything. So all he ended up doing was affirming his relationship with his uncle and like affirming his new status. So yeah, like he's like gained a lot, but nothing that he wanted, and he's lost everything that he wanted.
Yeah, I like how there's no allusion at all at this point to the suitcase. Like he's not even like, oh, by the way, my suitcase. Like that's just completely out the fucking window.
Yeah.
I don't know how this novel develops, but it would be funny if there was like a continual like, and now the next thing comes to sweep you away. Like they get to the coast.
Or they don't get to the coast.
Yeah, this is like a Zizek exercise, like try to finish the story in a funny. Yeah. On the way to the coast, they meet this pirate, and then he like starts his career as a pirate, and then it just gets crazier. And eventually, he's like, "My salami!" I have to. He has a family somewhere in Poland, and then he's like, "I have to find my salami in New York."
I did read a bit of the synopsis for America, and apparently, I think in the following chapter, he ends up splitting from his uncle because,
of course,
because he met I think he met one of his uncle's friends without his uncle's full authority, without his uncle's full agreement. So he breaks from it in the full story of America. Yeah, it is like. is kind of like socially compelled to accept his like relationship with his uncle and everything that comes with that, like the status that he doesn't necessarily want. And he's also forced to ignore the Soka, or he's forced to like be among people who will completely ignore him. Yeah. Be on the side of like the authority. Yeah.
There is a certain feeling that is very real conveyed in the story about coming to a new place where every little like detail, every person you meet, every interaction you have could be like life defining for you at this point. Because he came here with nothing. It's like, I don't know how it was for you. You had some like connection to Japan, I guess, with, you know, relationships and whatever. But I guess when I first came to Japan, you know, it was like a completely blank new page for me, right? So
Yeah,
like
right.
Every person I talk to here, every friend I make, every acquaintance I make, like maybe I'll like spend the next 3 years with them, and like they'll greatly define my life.
Yeah.
So there is the sense of this in that story as well, where it's like, not necessarily being swept away, but like the potential opportunity in a new scenario is so big, and this guy seems to be like not able to commit to anything. He just goes on to the next and the next.
Yeah. I see that. Cool. All right, let's take a quick little break, and we'll come back to finish with a report from an academy. Boys. Okay, we're back. Welcome back, Phil.
Thank you for welcoming me back. I am also back.
So we told a little lie earlier. We said we were going to get a drink, but we actually went to the supermarket and bought some milk, which we're not drinking. So I am currently sitting here with my bottle of water. Phil, what do you have?
I have orange juice.
Yeah, a ginormous bottle of orange juice, which we were kind of working our way through earlier. So we're on to the next story, which is a report for an academy. This short story was written in 1917, or rather published in 1917, as a part of the series A Country Doctor, which includes, obviously, A Country Doctor. Kafka was 34 when he wrote this. It's kind of a little bit later on in his life. And it was also addressed to his father. It was like...
Really?
In the acknowledgements, it was written for my father. So maybe we can like make some connections here to Kafka and his father when we talk about this. But yeah, so what is a report for an academy, Phil? What is this little story?
So it starts out quite hilariously, and then gets like more serious and kind of like, what's going on here? But it starts out by, it is basically a report, like a letter, kind of this guy who talks about his former life as an ape. And he addresses the academy very humbly. You know,
yes.
You humble gentlemen of the academy, I will talk to you about my former life as an ape.
Yeah, so this story is an address to a fictional academy. It's a fictional letter, maybe. Or maybe it's a speech. And we'll just read the first sentence. Esteemed gentlemen of the Academy, you do me the honour of asking me to present a report to the Academy concerning my previous existence as an ape. These are like the first words we hear.
Yeah, and I thought they were hilarious, and I immediately wanted to start my thesis that way.
Your graduation thesis.
Yeah, like I don't think it's meant that way in retrospect, but it feels so like making fun of the academy.
Right, sure.
Oh, look at me! I'm a humble, dirty commoner.
Yeah.
You esteemed gentlemen of the academy. What did you think? Well, reading the opening, did you have the same like humorous reaction?
Yeah. It was a funny reaction. Like I did believe what he was saying. Firstly, I didn't think it was a joke.
Okay, I did.
Right. Okay. I thought it was real, or like I thought it was genuine because like I was anticipating something surreal, and like a really mundane title like a report from an academy.
Yeah.
I was kind of anticipating some kind of weird switch.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I also did not expect it to become so like serious and realistic. It was like situated in a very real world and quite sad and quite depressing and in different ways.
Okay, so basically what he does in this report is he describes how he was picked up by the Hagenbeck Company, which I'm just going to read the footnote in my book. Karl Hagenbeck, 1844 to 1913, was a German zoologist who became famous in Europe and Africa for organizing large-scale scientific hunting expeditions to capture wild animals that were then put in zoos. So, he describes how he was captured by the Hagenbeck Company in... Was he in Africa, I think, right?
Yeah. Oh, maybe. Said the Gold Coast, isn't that Australia?
Oh, shit. I overread that. Okay, well, anyways, maybe we should look that up. He was captured somewhere by this scientific expedition.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was brought back to Europe, and he details how he was treated on the ship and how he was put in this cage, and eventually he became a human.
Yeah. It was kind of like his way of escaping from the cage, essentially, right?
Yes.
Alright.
So he describes that he didn't want freedom per se, but he wanted to get out or get away from his current circumstance, from this cage.
Yeah.
And so in order to do that, the best thing seemed to be to become a human.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's like that's like the key thing. Like, it wasn't to be free. He recognizes that the cage is like the end for him, for his freedom. Like there's this like distinction between like animal freedom and any other kind of freedom, right? And like, I think he even talks about how for an ape there is no idea of what like, and there is no place that is inescapable for an ape. Like they're in any ordinary circumstance. And yeah, so the story ends, or rather the address ends with him, describing the progress that he's made. He's learned English. He received tutelage from all these people. He decided not to go to a zoo, but to, I think, go essentially to what would have been a circus.
The music. What is it called in your translation?
It's called the Varieties.
Oh, for me it's called. What is it called? It's like called the music stage or something.
Yeah, the zoo or the variety, but it's like variety show, I imagine, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, so he decides to go for this variety thing, and then he develops. He gets educated. He has this like real enterprising character. He develops this like very. It feels like he's some kind of working class like industrial age like capitalist who's like worked himself up from the bottom kind of thing. Like,
yeah.
He's got this like drive that comes from nowhere, or that comes from somewhere deep in him, kind of thing. But of course he's an ape.
And the question is kind of, why did you write this report? So the story ends by the sentence: "I simply wish to share my knowledge. All I am doing is submitting a report, which, esteemed gentlemen of the Academy, is what I have done for you. I'm not looking for human opinions." So, yeah, I guess who is the Academy? And one question I also had in reading this is like, so in this world, is the assumption that everyone starts out as an ape, or is just he a single ape,
Mm.
or what is?
I interpreted this as just him, or maybe not just him, but he is one of a handful of apes. So he is, they're living in a human world.
Is the assumption that, and I'm not saying this is Kafka's assumption, but the assumption made in the book that Kafka might be criticizing, that people of quote-unquote lower cultures are apes, and the Europeans are civilized and so on.
Yeah, there's definitely like this, like that seems to be this context he's criticizing or alluding to it, at the very least. Like the idea of cultural assimilation, and also he's situating like European culture with what it is to be human, right? And like he talks about shaking hands and stuff like that, and like these matters of etiquette, which are obviously very culturally situated as being the like pinnacle of human like civilization or culture, I guess. Right?
I found it interesting how the first kind of human traits that he picked up, the first like behaviors that he learned, which made him become a human, were smoking and drinking.
Well, yeah. I mean, it is significant because like there are like I think there's like some old adage or like some funny quote, which is like if apes are more intelligent than humans because if you give an ape whiskey, they'll drink it once and never drink it again. And it's like in overcoming that like very natural response to what is effectively poison, you are becoming human.
I see. Logicking out. Like, this is bad for me, but I'm going to do it anyway. That's conscience, right? Okay.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I think one of the interesting parts about this is it kind of like he talks about freedom, right? And he like seems to renounce any idea of freedom when he's put in that cage, and like he then turns to this solution of becoming human as this way of getting out of this cage, and I don't know how to describe it, but like what was my point? I'm getting lost now.
Are you reverting to an ape?
Maybe. I had a good point. I think.
Are you the stoker?
Fuck you. I think the idea is that like what I picked up on this like suggestion or this thing that like being human is being trapped in a way, or there's something about being trapped that makes you human. And I feel like that's maybe part of this.
So why do you think is he so explicitly saying that he's not looking for freedom? Why would he make that? Like he's like, I just want something different than being an ape in this cage. Just give me something else. I don't want freedom.
Yeah.
Why would he be so insistent about that?
He could be like, no, it doesn't make sense that he would want to be like, he has like material interests. I don't think because like I don't think to any outsider they necessarily mean anything, right? Like I don't think a monkey would like give a shit if you have like a membership to an academy or whatever, or like even if you have an education. So it's not that. I don't know if it's like conscience, like consciousness, sorry. Because maybe it's something to do with consciousness, because like he develops like this self-reflective ability, it seems, and we know that as well, I think, because when he talks about his his female ape mistress, who's like half trained.
Yeah.
We're given a view into what where he came from, right? Like a place that he came from, where there's this kind of like lesser being on account of their like lack of training or lack of education, lack of like, you know, cultural ability or whatever. They are not even considered on his level, right? So I think what he's gaining is some kind of like, I don't know, self-awareness. And he doesn't claim to be, he doesn't push higher, he doesn't push above his weight, I don't think. He's like very clear about the fact that he's an ape, or that he was an ape, let's say. He's very clear about like his like physical characteristics. He's very forthcoming about the fact that he was hunted, and that he has no problem showing his like scars and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, he's not like ashamed of what he is, but he's got this kind of like quite level, like, I am this kind of mindset.
Yeah, I wanted to just read the passage about freedom, maybe that'll help. But so it reads, I'm worried that people might not understand what I mean by way out. I use this term in its fullest and most ordinary sense. I deliberately avoid the word freedom. I'm not thinking about the feeling of being able to go wherever you want. Perhaps I experienced this when I was an ape, and I have since met human beings who yearn for it. Personally, I have never demanded to be free, not then or now, but that's incidental. All too often people deceive themselves that they are free. For just as freedom belongs among the noblest sentiments, so does the illusion that accompanies it. Before going on stage in the music hall, I have often seen a pair of trapeze artists fondling each other up in the high wire. They launch themselves, they swing, they leap, they hover in each other's arms. One holds the other by the hair with their teeth. That's human freedom for you, I used to think. Being in control of your movements. What a mockery of the sacred God-given nature. At the very sight of it, the ape kingdom would laugh so hard that there is not a building in existence that would remain standing.
Yeah. Perfect quote.
That's hard to unpack, but there's a lot in there.
There is. There's a convenient Nietzsche reference as well, right?
Trapeze artist?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which I think is like...
The rope dancer.
Which is also like an essential question for Nietzsche. Which is like how can you interpret your freedom, or like how can you be sure of your ascension to the Übermensch? How can you be sure you're working in the right direction? Yeah, cool.
Yeah, so he makes 2 points. One is that if freedom is accompanied by delusion, or illusion, the illusion that you are free when you're really not.
Or at least they both exist.
Yeah.
And they both are very, very they both appear very similar.
Yeah, so maybe one reason is that he doesn't want to be a fool who tricks himself into believing that he's free when he's really not. He'd rather just acknowledge that he's not. Another reason, we have this idea of freedom just being freedom of movement, being able to where you want to go, being in control of your movements. What a mockery of the sacred God-given nature. What do you make of that? True freedom is of the mind, something like that?
Mastering movement of the mockery of the sanctity of nature. Maybe.
We have the ape kingdom would laugh so loud that there is not a building in existence that would remain standing. So building here, I think, clearly standing for human civilization.
Yeah. I think...
nature, yeah.
Yeah, and the trapeze artist is like, it's something that people find enticing, and like it appears like people are flying, and it's like it has this like, it looks like people are free, it looks like people are like masters of themselves and whatever, but it is just a performance, right?
Yeah.
And that's clearly like one of the things that the apes would be laughing at.
Right.
But,
okay.
like, I don't know what mastery and movement actually means.
So one thing I guess you touched on here is that the trapeze artist isn't actually free in his movement.
Yeah.
He's putting on a performance of freedom, when in reality he's probably indebted to the circus manager and the low wage and so on. Right?
And at the very least under a contract, right? That's probably,
And another thing maybe is with this emphasis on movement, like what puts the humans, I guess, apart from animals and apes is it's not their ability to move, but their mind, their capacity for consciousness and ideas and so on. So, but then, what is it that emblemizes freedom for humans? What do they enjoy watching?
Yeah.
People, their physical movement.
Yeah.
Like it's something that's so low, basically.
Yeah, and no one, people don't, people do not think about their own freedom as through their ability to think. Like, at the very least, like, whilst it can be a component of freedom, it can also be the complete opposite.
Yeah.
The ability to think, and like, the ability to even think deeply is even worse.
Yeah. Not to go back to your previous topic of me hating on the World Cup, but I sometimes have
behind the scenes Patreon.
I sometimes have this idea or this urge in my head, like when I see someone in their like skyscraper, like high expensive apartment, watching on their HD flat screen TV. They're watching the like Olympic Games of someone like trying to jump over a stick high. It's like, do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, really, this is the amazing part. This guy jumping over a stick high.
Yeah.
It bothers me in a sense.
We can talk about that for a long time.
This fetishizing of like simple movement.
Yeah, fetishizing of like
the animal,
human physical ability or whatever. Yeah. I'm glad we're
like I'm not trying to say that Olympic like athletes aren't amazing, but there is that idea that
well, and not to get off topic, but like I often find it quite funny how like some people who are like quite dismissive of art and like dismissive of the qualities of art, who are also like, they appreciate like things like sport.
Yeah.
It just seems like I don't know. It's like this like, it's just like, okay, so you just like this specific thing which is completely fucking meaningless essentially.
Yeah.
Or like, I don't know. Yeah, we can unpack that later.
Okay, there was one other funny part with the trousers that I wanted to read. Where is this? Can't find it.
What is it later in the story?
No, it's at the beginning. Okay. I have every right... Okay, so he... where do we start with this? I recently read an article by one of the thousands of bird-brained hacks who sound off about me in the press, saying that I still haven't quite managed to suppress the ape in me. The proof being that when someone comes to see me, I have a tendency to drop my trousers to show them my wound. This individual ought to have the dear little fingers of the hand he writes with chopped off one by one. I have every right to take off my trousers in front of whomever I like. All they will see is well-brushed fur and the scar from, and to avoid any confusion, let's use a precise term for a precise purpose, a heinous and criminal gunshot. So he's talking about how he was shot
when he was captured.
When he was captured, yeah. Everything is plain to see. There's nothing to hide. When it comes to the truth, any high-minded person casts aside their refined and polished manners. On the other hand, if this scribbler were to drop his trousers when he has visitors, then it would be quite another thing, and I would consider it a sign of common sense if he didn't do so. But I'd be grateful if he could spare me his delicate sensibilities. Okay. Other than just kind of being funny.
Yeah.
This part with the fingers being chopped off.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Like, kind of. Well, we obviously have some like allusions to like censoring the press and like, you know, those kind of like violent punishment of journalists. I don't know what to make of it. Like,
I didn't think it's so much of like because he's not like advocating censorship because of any like through any like political motive. It's purely like a personal thing.
Right. Okay, fair enough.
And
but
I think here as well, if anything, maybe it's like almost it's a demonstration of his like his level of civility, that he can counter something that's like aimed against him, and like counter something that's like so kind of, what's the word, like if he were incapable of defending himself, it would prove that he is not up to the standards of humans, maybe, right?
But the fact that he has such a violent reaction is kind of playing into the hands of his opponent.
Maybe, but I don't know that like I honestly, I don't know if like that would be so out of place. Like,
right.
I think it's not unimaginable that like someone writing in defense of themselves would say something like that.
Okay, fair enough.
I don't think it's a reflection of his like quote unquote apeness or whatever necessarily. It might be, but yeah.
Louis C.K. be like, I have every right to take off my trousers in front of whomever I like. Sorry.
So moving on, I wanted to again as well, just to finish off that point, like he talks about his own name, Red Peter.
Yeah.
And he's like, I hate this name, this repulsive name. And like there's this weird like meta thing going on where he's like commenting on himself almost as if he's like above himself, talking about himself.
I don't think he's well, he's criticizing the people who gave him that name.
Yeah, of course, but like it's like if he's not just criticizing it, but he's demonstrating an awareness of the fact that his name is vile, or like his name is like not nice. So, and that is like a demonstration of his civility or whatever. But so there are some other kind of themes, I guess, as well, and the idea of like paternalism, right, and like being he is assimilated. Where is this bit? So, and he yeah. Anyway, I'll read this quote. So this is after he wakes up in the cage. He says, after the shots I woke up, and herein my own memories gradually... After the shots I woke up, and here my own memories gradually take over. In a cage situated between decks on the Hagenbeck Company steamer. It was no ordinary barred cage with 4 walls. Instead, it consisted of only 3 walls attached to a crate, the crate forming the 4th wall. The whole thing was too low for standing up and too narrow for sitting down, so I squatted with my knees tucked in, and trembling the whole time, and because at first I probably did not want to see anybody, but only to be in darkness, I faced towards the crate, with the bars behind me cutting into my flesh. It's considered a good thing to keep wild animals in this way during the initial period, and I cannot today, after my own experience, deny that from the human point of view this is indeed the case. So when I read this, I immediately thought of like the the thing that like parents tell you when they want you to do something, and they like it's for your own good. And then regrettably, when you grow older, you're like, shit, they were right.
Yeah.
Or like, it's not always the case, but like that when you reflect on something that someone forced you into doing and you realize that was a good thing. In this case, like, is it a good thing?
Yeah, he seems to be criticizing that idea almost. Like, now because you're on the other side, you agree to something that once you felt was unjust violence.
Yes. And pretty horrible as well. Like,
Yeah.
really, really horrible. Like, obviously a like really horrible situation. The whole thing is like a disaster.
It's kind of similar. I don't know how appropriate this is. It's kind of similar how immigrants often vote a lot like against immigration policy, basically.
Right, sure.
Like, I got in, now let's keep these 30 people out.
You could word that so much better. I guess so. I don't know.
I feel similar about being in Japan almost.
Right.
I don't want all these foreigners to come here.
But like, that's not.
They're gonna be rowdy in the street, and they're gonna sing loudly their soccer hymns after the game when everyone's trying to sleep.
Yeah, I guess, what was I gonna say? Yeah, so you go through a transformative experience, and then you see that as necessary, and then you apply that to other people. Right. That's the idea. Sure. Yeah. So, yeah, he goes through this transformative experience, and he also describes like the point where he kind of like close to these points where he's sort of slowly learning and like slowly becoming human, and he starts by imitating people, right? So he starts by like smoking a pipe, and like he makes people laugh loads when he pushes his pipe in the bowl and stuff. But even though he doesn't recognize the difference between a full pipe and an empty pipe, and it's kind of like, in a way, you know how like AI image generators and stuff, they will give you an impression of something, and you're like, oh wow, that actually looks really real. And then you like look at the hands, and they're just like weird balls of like clumps of something, or you like look at like the way it does glass. I don't know. There are all these like weird, horrible details of AI image generation and stuff, and it's a similar kind of thing. I feel it's observation, like taking information, trying to imitate, which is obviously what kids do as well. But
their hands don't end up like disgusting. I guess the question is, what do we take from this story? Like, is this some kind of critique of like colonial assimilation? Is this like, or is it the opposite? Is it saying that once people are properly assimilated, they will come to understand the higher culture or whatever? I don't know.
I think I don't think it's a positive. Maybe no.
The ape definitely seems better off now and
but
happier.
He does, but I'm not sure if that's the point. Like,
is it making a point about humanity in general, or our lower character, and that that things we take for granted is just because of our cultural circumstances?
Too many questions. Okay, first thing, I think I'm not sure if we're supposed to identify with the ape. I'm not sure if we're supposed to identify positively with the ape or with the human. and I think, or at least like to me, the way that this is like formed, it's like a letter to an academy, and it's like all this like bullshit, like brown nosing and pointless formalities and all this stuff, and like he does like it's interesting learning about his story, but at the end of the day, like this guy just completely upturned his whole existence just to get like an average European education and also just be an ape living in European society, and it's like fine. Yeah.
So who is the academy?
I don't know. That's the question, right? I thought the academy would be maybe like an organization that helped him at some point later after he became human, right?
Oh, I don't mean like specifically in the story, but like.
Oh, I feel stupid.
Is I don't know. It's the idea that you mentioned like the idea of working yourself up from a lower class, working class person to like a higher status. Is there an idea, a notion here of having to justify your lowly existence or your maybe your ties to whatever your low status family and shit once you become into a high class society?
As a means of like proving how humble your beginnings are,
or yeah, I guess like making sure that you're like I have nothing to do with this anymore. I renounce this.
Oh, renouncing it, sure.
Or just kind of addressing somehow having to justify yourself.
I think
this high class.
I think that's the thing. Like, it's like how again like addressing this like unnamed cold like authority, just like this academy, and like we have this idea of like going to some academic forum where everyone is like super high flying, like in their fucking robes and the ivory tower, whatever. I don't know what you want to call it, but and having to like having to persuade them of your like character or something.
Your merit of being there.
It's the same as the Stoker in a way, right? Like the Stoker is in a similar position. They aren't. He's complaining, but in a way he's also trying to affirm himself against this.
He's trying to justify his existence on the ship, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Towards this like kind of fairly abstract authority.
Yeah. Here you have your high discipline, your nice ship, your working system. Here's me, a low, humble man. This is me justifying my existence to you. Maybe Shoeball is more like the ape in that story because he like knows how to address people. Right. He's the learned ape.
He's the learned one.
Level 7 ape. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna use this opening sentence for future essays.
Yes, that's the way to do it.
Esteemed gentlemen of the Academy, you have accorded me the honor of inviting me to submit a report about my former life as a libertarian. I renounce my liberties and pledge allegiance to the party.
Will we get through a podcast without the word libertarian coming up?
No.
Never. Clearly.
Okay.
Cool. So I think we'll wrap up things here. It's been a good discussion. I've enjoyed it a lot. I feel like I could talk about Kafka forever. So we'll probably return if we ever have like a desperate moment where we haven't done the reading that we need to do.
Yeah. Kafka short stories are always there to support you.
For sure.
Okay.
Great. So, we'll be back in 2 weeks. And
with a Christmas special ?
Yeah, we're thinking about doing a Christmas special. We haven't decided what exactly it will be yet. But yeah, it will be a good one. Maybe.
Oh, really selling it.
No one's listening anyway.
Okay. Good night.
Good night.
Boys, 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 boys.